It's a very broad collection. It's a recognition that we all have multifaceted lives. And women are prepared to pay for those clothes. They're prepared to pay for beautiful quality that lasts. You know that the codes, that the messages that Chanel jacket is sending out transmit something very positive about you, the wearer.
I mean, if economic growth and affluence is so good for us, why are so many people unhappy?
We're told we're richer, healthier, smarter and happier than ever before. Are we? In this modern world where cars think for you while you dream of winning lotto,
next right.
Why are we all working longer and harder to earn more, to pay for more?
What I want to know is this as good as it gets?
History is about the rise, influence and fall of civilizations. Most recently, the Egyptians, Greeks and Romans. After a defined period of progress, they eventually succumbed to self-indulgence and moral decay. The Judeo-Christian West has been the preeminent civilization for the past 2,000 years.
Today, North America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand and Japan are advanced liberal democracies that the rest of the world aspires to. But there's a brewing anxiety amidst this abundance.
But one thing I've learned is God likes to outdo himself. God's dream for your life is so much bigger than your own. God is going to take you places that you've never thought possible. He is going to open up doors that you've never imagined. He's going to bring talent out of you that you didn't even know you had. This is the time to get excited about your future. It's time to get your hopes up. You are not here by accident. You have been chosen by the Creator of the universe. And you're
We're led to believe that money gives us choice, status, and increasingly, an identity. But there's something hollow about all this. Whose meaning or identity is it? Am I really defined by where I live, what I wear, eat, or drive, or am I just another willing victim? But since when has happiness or even fulfillment depended on consumption?
If you look at the 7 deadly sins and cardinal virtues, for example, the virtues are things like faith, hope, charity, prudence, temperance or moderation, religion, and fortitude, courage or strength. The vices are typically pride in the sense of vanity or self-centeredness, envy, avarice or greed, gluttony, wrath or anger, sloth or laziness. By their nature, individualism and materialism have tended to, in fact, reverse that list and place a lot of emphasis on the individual satisfying their desires and needs. And what we see out of that is this cascade of personal and social consequences that are really harmful to both the individual and society.
Their faith that they are presenting is very simplistic and black and white and based on a very intense and narrow form of personal morality that in fact doesn't deal properly with the complexity of life, then people are often going to be in a far worse state when they leave those churches, which they will, than they were when they came.
Australia is a rich country. Most people in Australia have no difficulty meeting their material needs at all. So the economic imperative for working long hours is not there. It's just a personal preference for more imported cars and televisions and less time with our family and friends.
In the end, what does it all mean? Have you lived well? all the thoughts thought, all the people you loved, fought, and laughed with? Or was it about what you earned and bought? Here, in the godless best of the West, what does it all mean?
I know when I was what I thought was on my deathbed 21 years ago, I wasn't lying there thinking, gosh, I've lived in some lovely houses, I've driven some wonderful cars. It was more about, am I at peace with myself? Do I know myself? Am I at peace with my history? Do the people that love me know who I am? It's never about the stuff.
We believe that God is giving himself all the time, and our problem is that we don't listen to that, we don't observe it, we don't take space, time away to see what's actually happening around us.
We've been hijacked by the market, fed a high finance diet, and sold an economic lie. In a permissive but increasingly shallow society, pursuing mammon and cut-glass heroes. We revel in other people's outrage and scandal, while aspiring to gloss and spectacle. Like ancient Rome, we fiddle with excess, while knowingly contributing to our own demise. Our virtues embrace faith, hope and charity, while our vices typically lurk within schadenfreude, sloth and envy. What does remain at the glittering heart of Western life is freedom. Freedom to think, to speak, to live as you wish, underwritten by law.
One of the really interesting things about our situation is that liberalism has really been about defending the individual and his or her freedom against the encroachment of the church and the state. Neoliberals really equate the freedom of the individual with the freedom of the market, but the market has much more influence on our lives today than does the state and the church, I think.
But are we really free individuals in a free market? In this era of mindless consumption, in which the word no does not exist, offering debt without discipline, do we have the ability to control the market anymore?
I mean, after 9/11, both the mayor of New York and the president of the United States came out and said, it's your duty to get out and shop. Robert Reich wrote an editorial saying, since when did it become an American duty to shop? But really our economy depends on us shopping in this manic kind of way in order to keep it operating at this extraordinary level.
God bless you. I want to talk to you today about walking in the fullness of the blessing. Every one of us as God's children has what the Scripture calls the blessing. It's an empowerment, a divine enablement to accomplish our God-given dreams.
God was used to justify the getting of wealth and power. Politics and religion shared the same bed, and neither have been the same ever since.
Nevertheless, Christianity was the bedrock of expansionist Western civilization until recently. Materialism's final victim is Christianity.
The way that we do it is actually closer to the way that it was done originally. And what's happened is we've had 1600 years where it all went weird.
Here, in our weird, market-driven West, a search for the spiritual must be a good thing. Even the monks, from our many spectral spiritualities, are finding common ground. Once a year, New Norcia's Benedictine monks spend the day taking tea and talking with the Buddhist monks of Serpentine, south of Perth. A mountain meditation course, a weekly stint at yoga, or even a couple of years of monasticism isn't going to fill the vacuum of a self-indulgent life in a material world. So, get off my cloud.
Christianity had become a religion which was mainly reduced to ethics. And there was a great deal of conventional church going in.
As we continue to consume without consequence, we risk junking the things that make the West a dignified place to be.
We appear to be entering either a new renaissance or a new dark age, and at this stage the evidence is not really clear which way we'll go.
And we've nearly given up on God as a guide. We've replaced a complex search for the divine with a mundane pursuit of the worldly.
I think we've shifted from what we have to what we don't have, and I think that's partly the commercialism. You know, you sit and watch television and they tell you that you need this and you need that. It's a loss of religion. I remember being at Sunday school and you'd sing a little ditty, you know, count your blessings. We don't do that anymore. You don't get that sense of, I'm so lucky.
We can measure economic growth, but how do you measure goodness or virtue?
70% of the internet is porn. I mean, that's an astonishing figure when you consider that this is the greatest technological innovation since we landed a man on the moon.
I think one of the first things we've got to say about accessing pornography is that it can, in fact, be an educational thing for young people because it exposes them to a wide range of sexual practices. It gets them thinking about their own sexual identity.
No one wants to return to the 1950s and all of the sexual repression and the furtiveness and the guilt and the hang-ups. But today, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old can go to the internet and with a few clicks of the mouse can be watching images of coprophilia, bestiality, rape scenes, possibly real rape scenes. 14-year-old boys are looking at this stuff every day.
We're not animals, and we don't want our society to be ruled by the law of the jungle, where the strong take what they can and the poor and the weak give what they have to.
Who's right anymore? Who's wrong? Who do we turn to in our individual Western lives to restate our collective moral guidelines, once the preserve of the Church?
The Church does not have any moral authority anymore on sex. They simply have none. We now have, in this country, over 500 convicted church clergy for child sex abuse offences in this country. We don't have one adult shop owner or adult shop, X-rated video sale or anything like that who's ever been convicted of one of these offences. And it just makes my blood boil that these people are pointing the finger at us, because it's a way of shifting their guilt.
Yes, alive and well in all its sectarian divisions. There's grim disillusionment with God's offices and their high sacred vows. Poverty, chastity and obedience have descended into a muddy scrum of wealth, sex and power.
Well, in recent years, when confronted with allegations about the sexual abuse of children and other vulnerable people by the clergy, what did the churches do? They privileged the law over love, property over people. They privileged protecting their back over facing the truth.
It's not that we live in a society devoid of virtue. Many people live well, decently, even honourably. There are families, schools, churches and neighbourhoods that work. There are places where virtue is taught and learned. But there is a lot less of this than there ought to be. And we know it.